All right, everyone, thanks for joining us once again, where it's a real special treat for you all this evening, actually, because we've been trying to get this organised for a little while, and we finally have. We've got Mr. Simon Frost with us, who is the inventor of Neuro Reset technique by Simon Frost, of course, which is the very thing I've been going through and doing behind the scenes with Jess to sort out one or two issues that I've had going on. But I'm going to let Jess introduce Simon to us and give us a bit of background on him, and then we'll start firing some questions at Simon about NRT. What is it? How does it work? All that kind of stuff. So over to you, Jess.
I'm so excited. You guys both know that you're both two very important men in my life, and you're both very big influences on my learning and have been over the last however many decades of my health and fitness journey. So I'm just so excited to talk to you guys both today and, have Bart ask and be out and someone be able to answer his questions, because as we've said, my brain is nothing compared to you two, and I'm just a mere mortal practicing the most amazing tool in the world, which is Neuro Reset technique. It's completely changed everything in terms of my approach to health and fitness. I'm so grateful for him, and that we came across each other about 14 odd years ago now, maybe longer. And that Simon kindly took me in and slightly under his wing to learn this incredible tool, which he had, what do you call it, discovered, Simon? Scientific discovery, which allows us to treat clients and help lots of thousands of people all over the world.
Awesome. Two of the most important men in your life, Jess. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Jess. You can't have other friends. Other friends. Goodness.
Yeah. Three, I should say. Three very important men in my life.
Yes.
Yeah,
we can't forget that other one. Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, Simon, welcome. Thanks so much for giving up some of your valuable time this morning, your time, this evening, our time. You're on the other side of the world. Isn't it amazing what we can do with technology these days? And really, the NRT thing strikes me as a real technology in and of itself, actually. So give us a real too long, didn't read version of a real simple breakdown. How would you, if someone said to you, okay, NRT, Simon, what on earth is that? What would you say if you had just several minutes to explain it to somebody?
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me on the show, and Jess for that great introduction. It's been a pleasure working with Jessica all these years, and she's taken to NRT, brilliantly, especially as one of the first students to ever study NRT with me, and I was quite apprehensive initially teaching it to others after spending so long developing it and testing it. How easy that would be to transfer to others, and Jessica is just an exemplary example of how great a practitioner can be. So I'm thrilled to have her on board. This is a difficult question because you're asking a question of how do I explain NRT, and I generally change that explanation according to the person I'm talking to, because everybody's got their story, everybody's got their issue, and you've got to frame NRT accordingly to that issue, and that way they can relate to it more easily and accept that maybe they want to give it a try, because it is quite different to everything else. If we simplify it into what are the outcomes we can provide, the three main outcomes I always talk about with everybody is improved posture, improved mobility, and improved strength, and that sounds like what everyone else is doing. And it is in the way that we're talking about it. Everybody else is advertising that, but how they go about achieving that and measuring that is very, very different with NRT. So if you're looking at fundamentally how it does that or what it's trying to achieve with somebody, it's about recruitment efficiency and contractile efficiency, and why that's important. If you think about traditional therapies of any nature to do with physical health and well-being when it comes to movement, everybody wants to achieve mobility, so they want to release and relax tension in their body in some capacity, and they want to improve contractile ability of muscle. Not that they talk about it like that, but they talk about it as strength and tightness, or something needs to be released and something needs to be strengthened. And that's typically the approach. You know, a physio will take that approach, chiropractor, an osteopath, etc. They all have different ways of working, a personal trainer, but it's this the idea of releasing something and strengthening something. And NRT is not about releasing anything or strengthening anything per se. It's very simply about contractile efficiency. And that's because the whole point of a muscle is to contract. That's its job. That's its purpose in life in terms of movement and skeletal function. It's to contract. So NRT makes sure that is optimal. It's about trying to find a way of achieving optimal contractile efficiency. And when all your muscles work the way they're supposed to, the movement works the way it's supposed to. So that's an easy way of thinking about it.
Oh, I was just going to say, Simon was saying something that resonates so much, because depending on who you're talking to, it does completely change the way that you might explain NRT to somebody, depending on what their individual weaknesses or issues may be. And there's so many things that it can help with as well. And you don't want to say it's a one-stop shop for everything, but really in terms of optimizing health and function, motor control, muscle recruitment, strength, mobility, it is above and beyond anything that exists. And I love saying that because I can say it with such confidence after almost a decade of using NRT. And it took my clients to a level I could just never have, one, dreamt of, or two, thought that I could achieve, like myself, being a trainer back in the day. And I was a good trainer, like, not to toot my own horn, but I worked hard. I learnt a ton. And I really gave a shit about people's health because of my own experience with my own health and having trainers injure me and, all these other things. I wanted to do better for people. And as a trainer, and I got very good at modifying around things. If someone had a tight this, or they had a sore this, or, you'd modify exercises and you could kind of try and work around their issue. And if you couldn't, you'd then go, okay, guys, physio or, something else, because I'm out of my depth here, right? And a lot of the times my clients would come back and they would have exacerbated issues, or they wouldn't get any better. Or I just thought, come on, there's got to be something in the world that is better, that offers people actual results, and not over 6 months, 12 months, in 2 years you might get this rotor cuff it's something that actually works and you could see it working. And that's what I got with NRT. So when I was first introduced to it, I thought, oh my God, what is this magic? I was like, I really want to learn it. Please, will he teach me? Please. And I was really blessed to be able to learn this and share this, and now share this with the world. And thinking about that first time that I saw NRT and how blown away I was by it and how desperately I wanted to learn it, I also didn't think that we'd be in this position now where we can treat online, because strengthening the nervous system, the brain, the sensory neural pathways is hands-on. So I was like, how am I ever going to do this virtually? And that was what has come out of the last 2 years of chaos for me, is this great gift that we can do this online, because Bart is in the South Island. So although, London is much, much further away, it means I can see my clients in London. I can see people, internationally or nationally, and you get really good results. And obviously it's never going to be as good as my hands on your body or Simon's hands on your body. And but it has results that we can replicate, that everybody gets results from. It's not this thing where it's a hit or miss and it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. It works for every single client that I've ever laid my hands on. And now that I have coached well virtually, I've also had really fundamental changes in their function, their health, their posture, their strength, their mobility. And the reason I come across as so excitable about it is because it fucking works. Excuse my French. It works. And it's not, you have to wait X amount of time. And Bart, from this, you've had 20, however many years with your motorcycle accident and your shoulder problems?
Well, I destroyed my shoulder when I was 19, and I've just turned 50. And it's never been the same in the interim.
Yeah.
So we're talking a long time with a shoulder that was basically destroyed. Now, to back up what Jess is saying, we did 4 sessions, and we did those virtually exactly like what we're doing, having this discussion right now. Jess coached me through what I needed to do, and we did that. And in 4 sessions, we went through all the muscles of that shoulder. And having done months and months and months of rehab at the time of the injury, and months of physiotherapy, etc., post-event, to end up with a shoulder that was destroyed and was never the same again, and then to turn around and have 4 sessions with Jess, and the difference is night and day, and it seems to be permanent.
Yay!
It doesn't seem to be falling away again.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing thing. It's an incredible thing. So, again,
talk about that.
Yeah, please.
You know, you've had 4 sessions where you've been coached through a very tiny piece of NRT, because NRT has. Let's really talk about what it is. It's a sensory motor learning modality, right? It's about learning how to use your body, and that's what defines it or makes it different to everything else. You know, and other people do talk about learning. You know, in physiotherapy, they have this saying, you know, you have to do 1,000 repetitions to you know, consolidate something. So if I do this exercise 1,000 times, my knee will track more efficiently. And that's just not how motor learning really works. And, you know, 1,001 isn't going to get you where you need to be, which is traditional rehab. You know, we give you these exercises to do. You do them week after week, and we hope that you're going to get better. But how do we even measure where the problems were to start with? How we even diagnose that issue? How we even got to the point where we decided you needed to do this rotator cuff exercise? That's for me is what was missing from traditional rehab. It's all very much assumption based on, you know, I'll give you a great example. If you think about, you know, in the beginning I said it's about strength and posture and mobility. You know, people get told they've got this forward shoulder posture and they're slouching and they must strengthen their rhomboids. And, you know, I always think to myself, well, why rhomboids? Why are we picking that muscle or muscles? And why would training in the gym improve that? Especially when the gravity is acting, you know, effectively we're having to deal with gravity in this direction. And why is that suddenly going to, if I get 60 pounds of force on this rowing machine, I'm going to have these shoulders that sit perfectly in place.
Yeah.
And of course, the other side of that is, well, you've got tight pecs and that's what's pulling you forward. And I always think, well, yeah, if I can put my arm back here, then they can't really be that tight. So we're missing the concept there, which is, you know, it's about resting tone. Posture is defined by the resting tonus in the tissue. It's a neurologically controlled process.
Yeah.
It's not something we choose. Now, we do have consciousness and we can become conscious and hold ourselves differently, but we stop thinking, we stop being conscious of ourselves, and we default. And that default is governed by the sensory information coming in from our body to our brain, how it's being processed, and then how the brain is sending that information out through motor pathways to put tone into our tissue, resting tension. And that resting tension determines us. So if we want to improve posture, we need to improve the sensory input, processing, and motor output, and not worry about how many reps we do on this rowing machine or how many of this rotator cuff exercise we do. Because how do we know that was even the muscle that needed to increase tone in the first place?
Yeah.
How do we know that was the muscle that needed to be released, whatever release is, in the first place? You know, it's everything we do as a human being as far as movement is governed by sensory input, processing, and motor output. And that's something we learned, right? We weren't born with that. We were floppy. We come out in this vegetative state where we can't physically move ourselves very well and control our bodies. And through genetics and reflexes, we begin to move. It's not even a choice in the beginning. We don't choose to move our bodies. It's reflexive. And then through reflexive programming, effectively, from our genetics, that's evolution has provided us with. We begin to send information to our brain about our bodies. So we learn our bodies. As I say to people, it's like a Google map. You've got to map yourself.
Yeah.
And once you know yourself, you can use yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you haven't been able to put your arm back here somewhere, and I have no idea of your actual, condition, range, and movements and all that kind of stuff.
Look, the technical terminology that Jess used for my shoulder was, it's fucked, is what she said. So, yeah. And it no longer is.
Couldn't do this, right?
I couldn't. I had no elevation to speak of at all.
No, none.
So a traditional approach to that would be, well, we've got to release some stuff that's tight. So let's talk about what might be tighter up here. People are going to say things like pec and lat and all that kind of stuff, and then they're going to say, well, what's weak? Okay, maybe it's anterior deltoids, maybe it's some sort of rotator cuff muscles, maybe there's some scapular muscles involved in this, and they'll give you a training program for that. And again, it's this. You've got to strengthen something. Well, you can't strengthen something you can't recruit. So first and foremost, we need to know, can you recruit those tissues efficiently before we load them? Because otherwise, you're just going to compensate. If I give you an exercise trying to target a specific set of muscles through a design that's mechanically implemented, so I designed this exercise so mechanically it's going to bias these tissues. And I said, you're right, go and do this exercise, but I've got no idea of how well you're recruiting those muscles. There's no guarantee you're going to use those muscles.
Yeah.
So you could do that exercise for months on end and see no improvement in those tissues and build great compensation strategies and build a better job at this task. You'll be able to do this more efficiently in terms of, you can pull more load, but are you recruiting more efficiently? Are you using more of the correct tissue that's ideal for that action, or are you just using more of other stuff that you've built to achieve it? Recruitment efficiency is about getting the number of fibers, and keep it really simple, muscle fibers, the number of fibers involved. How many of these things can we recruit? And if you think of it as, if you look at fan-shaped muscles like on the hip and things like that, deltoids, those fans all have different directions of fibers, and those fibers all do different things in terms of our movement. So it's not an all or nothing process. It's a very finely controlled recruitment strategy that gives us fine movement and abilities. And if you don't have that, then you're going to suffer. If you can't recruit the muscles you need to get into some position, you're just not going to get there. And the question is, why can't you recruit them? And that is a sensory motor problem. It's a sensory processing motor problem. It's inability for the brain to send motor signals because it doesn't know the current status of that tissue. It hasn't got enough information to use your body well.
Yeah.
So
garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with nutrition, right? It's garbage in, garbage out. It's the same thing with most things in life, So if we want to improve someone's function, first of all, we need to assess their function. And how do we do that? Well, it's not a mobility thing, right? Everybody is so obsessed with mobility with no understanding, in my world, what mobility really means. And I like to think of mobility as it's movement without restriction. Great. So it's not where we're stretching. It's not where we're feeling tightness or restriction. It's where we're free. That's my mobile range. And how do I assess that? Well, people aren't even defining that. So they're saying, well, you need to be more mobile, but we haven't even defined what your mobile range is yet. And then we need to define what's your skeletal potential, because what are you made to do? Obviously, our structure is quite different for all of us. Some people who can do the splits are built to do the splits, and people who can't probably never will. Our faces are this different, and so are our joints.
Yeah.
And so we need to know the capacity for that function in terms of the skeletal capacity before we can even determine the overall range of motion. How would we even measure that? It would be impossible to measure. So, in living beings, right? It's not going to happen. So when we give someone a mobility exercise, something that's trying to promote range of motion, we don't even know if they've got the capacity for that motion. So they could just be trying to harm themselves for months on end, trying to achieve something that's not even achievable.
Yeah.
And again, they missed the point though, because the point is it's freedom to move without resistance. It's where your body is free. So even if you were to increase range, but you had to stretch it and push it and work with that tension, that's not increased mobility. Increased mobility is I can now put my arm here every day without resistance. It doesn't stop me. I don't feel any discomfort, tension. It's just free.
Mm.
And that mobility comes from control of muscle tissue, contraction of muscle tissue. It doesn't come from releasing and stretching something. Because ultimately, if you look at the signals going on in the nervous system and the pathway going up and down to the brain and what's actually happening at a neurological level with this stuff, tightness is just an involuntary contraction. That's all it is. It's the brain sending signals, or sometimes through reflexes across the spinal cord, that are limiting range of motions. So what the person is trying to modify when they're trying to modify their mobility is actually governed by the nervous system. And if they realize that and learn how to work with that, then they'll be able to gain that mobility very easily.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, the way I would describe it with my very limited experience of NRT, having done, I've actually now done several months of work with Jess. We did 4 sessions on the shoulder musculature. We've moved on from there. We're on to other things now.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to me very much like, I mean, it's a very well named thing, because it is about nervous recruitment. It is about the integration of nervous signals ascending either, as you quite rightly say, Simon, to the brain and back again, or in some cases, spinal reflexes that never even get to the brain. Absolutely. And reset. Absolutely. What it seems like what we're doing here is we're actually throwing in a cold, hard reboot here. We're going Control, Alt, Delete. Let's stop this garbage in, garbage out. Let's stop the garbage pathway, and let's allow the brain or spinal cord, as it may be, to reset this pathway, clear the junk out of there. And then once that nonsense that's causing a problem stops, the brain is then able to resettle and rewire that. And you basically are learning, if you like, for the first time in some cases, how to actually recruit the muscles properly in such a way as to allow, for example, in my case, to deal with a shoulder injury, which I thought would never be the same again, never be right. It's still not 100%, obviously, but it's night and day from what it was. There's still some adhesions in there. There's still some scar tissue. There's still a sense of, but I'm doing things. I'm moving through ranges of motion I couldn't use before. That allows me to actually start training that musculature again, which I haven't done for 30 years, for example. I can stop using the other side instead quite so much. I can stop recruiting other muscles incorrectly around it in such a way that's going to cause me all sorts of other problems, postural, pain, whatever else. It really is magic, and it doesn't even weigh the same as a duck.
And that's fantastic to hear. I mean, always, whenever anybody's improved in any way for NRT, regardless of how it was delivered online, in person, it's just, that's what I do it for. That was the whole point of it. Because I developed this because I had a tri-fractured elbow. Nobody seemed to be able to treat, and I didn't want surgery because every time somebody touched it, they would just basically inflame the area, ridiculous amounts of inflammation. My ulnar nerve would get trapped. I'd get shooting pains down my hand. My fingers would go numb, and my arm would just lock into a position for a week. And every kind of treatment I tried just aggravated it.
Yeah.
So NRT was developed to fix myself. it was how do I get my own arm better without having surgery? And I didn't want that surgery. And now I have as much mobility as I can possibly get. I recently had an MRI. It was about a month ago, and the consultant said, "You have an elbow of an 80-year-old." Looking at the X-rays, and then he did an assessment on me, and he started to crank on it and pull on it and do all sorts of things, shoving it in end range extension, full flexion, and full of pronation and supination on my floor, all these movements. And he was looking at my face, expecting me to be yelping. And I went for the MRI because I wanted to know how much is it deteriorate, how bad is it now? Because I've never had anything done to it. There's, I've got a 2 centimeter piece of bone floating around in there, and I've got lots of shards and fragments and whatever, and they seem to be dissolving a little bit, which is good. And the body is, I can train, I can box, I can run, I can sprint, I can, press up, pull up, whatever, and I'm fine. I have no pain.
Well, babe, the world is grateful that you designed it for yourself, because the amount of people that you and I and other practitioners have saved from having surgery, from having ongoing restrictions and disabilities. I mean, Bart couldn't put his arm above his head and sleep without pillows propped all around him, for God's sake. It's that day-to-day enhancement of life. It gives me tingles all over, because you have helped thousands and thousands of people with this, and you will continue to do so. And I love that I'm even a part of it. The other thing I love about NRT is the assessment protocol, that it has these robust assessment protocols, so that takes that guesswork out, because as a practitioner, you don't want to think or guess, I think they're pec is tight. For God's sake, I used to say that, by the way, to people when I was a trainer. Oh yeah, we've got to strengthen your posterior retractor muscles and lengthen these ones. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like food.
Traditional protocol, right, in health and fitness, have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I
love that. It's just great. It means that you don't have to guess. It means you can check your work. It means that you know that you're doing a good job during your sessions. It is I just think it's just incredible.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's an interesting point, right? So online, it's quite different, Bart. So when you're being assessed online, there is limited assessment, because the real data that we want to take in person, we measure contractile efficiency. We're taking force production readings. I have a little, force dynamometer here that I use, hooked up to the laptop or iPad, and I can see in real time force production, and I can measure positional force production. Put you in all sorts of positions, and those positions might mechanically bias different tissues, but more importantly, they neurologically bias different tissues, and we can see what you can do, and based upon how you produce force, and when we're talking about that, when I generate force here on my elbow, using bicep muscles here to muscles here that flex my elbow and a bunch of others too, my forearm, it's how effectively am I doing that? And on the graphs here, we can see things like the time it takes you to reach peak isometric contraction. We can see what your eccentric capabilities are. If we begin to overpressure, we can measure some stuff like that and take data and see how one side compares to the other, and then start to look at how, if we do something, whether it actually makes an improvement on that or not. And that is critical, because if we don't take any kind of measurements, we're just guessing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, right? Because you can go in, you can have a massage to release some tension, and they'll say to you, that's improved with function. I'm like, yeah, but function is a product of contraction. So you didn't measure contraction. If you didn't measure contraction, you didn't measure function, therefore you've got no idea what you actually did.
Yeah.
And yes, you may have changed that person's experience of themselves, and that's not hard, right? That's the point, is the person coming in who's coming for any kind of treatment with any practitioner in any modality for their physical health wants to experience a different feeling or sensation within themselves.
Yeah.
That's what they want. That's their goal, right? And for us to be able to say, well, you have knee pain because your patella's tracking poorly. I mean, that is just a guess, right? We don't know that, okay? Because first of all, pain is a neurological process. It's not a physical one, right? If we let's go and get you a nice little brain surgery and stop you feeling pain altogether. Okay, you will not have pain, right? Let's put some Botox in there and stop you being able to use stuff and see how it feels. I mean, we can change your experience of yourself. And anybody can do that, right? So when you have a massage, somebody is interacting with your nervous system. That's the crazy thing about it. Everybody is interacting with the nervous system and the brain in some capacity in any therapeutic intervention they work with in the physical modality. But they don't know what buttons they're pressing and why they're pressing them.
Yeah.
So when they're rubbing someone down or pushing hard on a point and they're going to call that a trigger point and then hold it and wait, or an acupressure point or any of these things, there's biological things happening and there's lots of stuff happening we've got no idea about, of course. But neurologically, there are signals being sent. There are messages being sent. And if my thumb seems to somehow soften that tissue subjectively as a practitioner, right? And I can feel that change, then I feel like I've done a good job as a massage therapist, right? So I've softened this tissue. But how do you grade the tissue? How do you know how soft it should be, how firm it should be? How do you know that was even a good idea or not? I mean, what was the mechanism that triggered that reaction? How long would that reaction last?
What's the side effects of that input?
Yeah. What does it do to that person and what they were asking for? Was to feel well in some capacity, to feel different. Did it make them feel different? Well, probably did, because in real time, we changed the experience you were receiving. Well, I could do that. You could just go and do some breathing, have a cup of coffee, go for a talk with your friends. All these things are going to change your experience of yourself. So we did something, and the question is that clinically relevant? Like, does it transfer beyond this moment to wellness in someone's life?
Yeah.
And how do we know that, and how do we measure that?
Yeah.
Well, you can't measure the tissue tension. I mean, you could, I suppose, measure how hard it is to press on exact points using specific force measuring devices, but no one's doing that, right? So, I'm subjectively going, well, next time this person comes in, I massage them, I'm going to just assume it's better than it was last time, or it feels softer than it was last time, or it feels just as hard, or maybe it's worse and I can't even read it because I've treated 15 people in between. It's just this thing where the person comes in, they want to feel different, we make them feel different, and then they go away and then they come back and they want to feel different and we make them feel different, and we keep doing that.
Yeah.
And that's the same with, nearly all modalities, right? Anything that's just done to you with no learning from you, you haven't actually learned anything from it. How could we expect that to transfer to anything beyond that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nothing in life just happens. You have to, if you want to gain something, you've got to work towards it.
Yeah, it's got to be earned. 100%.
And I can tell you, having done a few sessions of NRT, it is not a passive modality, boys and girls. This is not something that you go along for a nice massage and you lie there and Jess does her thing or whatever. No, this is work. Okay.
Yeah.
You are reteaching, as we said before, you are Control-Alt-Delete, you are resetting neural pathways, and there is an effort involved to the point where sitting here in nothing more than a tank top, I can get a sweat up and feel quite, after my first couple of sessions, more so than thereafter, but certainly after the first two sessions, quite exhausted, really, really worn out after the session.
Yeah.
And, 2 and 3 days of quite serious delayed onset muscle soreness afterwards as well. Yeah. Because we are recruiting muscle fibers that my brain had forgotten about.
Indeed.
And that were atrophied and we're just sitting there. Yeah. And, for example, the other day we did a bit of work on some respiratory muscles. And, that afternoon I was like, my God, I'm just walking the dogs. And I feel absolutely like I've been running a 12K run or something like that. And it's, it's just ridiculous. Obviously fine today, no problems there. But
after that period of recovery, because it's, with any form of exercise, you need to rest to actually develop, right? And the same here, we've got biological changes happening because some of the things we're doing are actually demanding enough to challenge the biology. Some of the things we're doing are demanding enough to obviously challenge the neurology, and those things need to grow and adapt and change, and that takes a few days. But on the other side of that, once you've got through that development period, once things have adapted and changed, then you really start to feel the benefits. Then you start to go, wow, actually, it's really easy to put my arm up here, and I can continue to do that every day because you've earned that. It's yours. You get to keep that, and you get to keep that as long as you keep putting your arm up there at some point, right? Your brain isn't going to get it.
I'm sleeping like this every night now because I can, and I haven't been able to for 30 years. I've had to have pillows and, all this kind of, and actually usually, give up after half an hour, roll over onto my back, sleep on my back and snore my head off. To the absolute delight of my lovely partner, by the way, who thinks it's great that I can now sleep in a position where I'm not snoring my head off, for example.
Awesome. So we've helped you in two ways there.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
We get tips for that part.
Tips. Yeah, good. Yeah, so it certainly is and has been a fascinating thing. It continues to be fascinating. Absolutely, I get that there are severe limitations to doing this remotely.
Yeah.
I mean, the distance between Jess and I is about the same distance as between London and the southern end of the Lake District, shall we say. But I mean, I could easily be in London, she could be in New Zealand, and it would be the same thing, what with technology.
Indeed.
But I get, that the importance of at some point, actual hands-on, actual measuring things using proper kit and that. I mean, I'm a scientist myself, so I get that. And I will. We will get together, and it'll be quite a reunion because I haven't seen Jess in the flesh since 2007.
Yeah, since I graduated.
Yeah.
As a young
I was actually
buck.
one of Jess's lecturers when she did her degree.
Yes.
So way back when. When I used to be part of the problem and not part of the solution.
Yeah.
But and think about you've had really, I mean, Jess messaged me last night to say what she had done with you, just briefly, because I didn't even know you had or hadn't had any treatment yet. And, from what I understood from the message was that you really only, in NRT we describe this as position and movement sense. Knowing where you are in space means that you can get to that position, and knowing how to move into that position and how the muscles do that based upon the information the brain needs in order to coordinate that. And really, you've only improved at those things, position and movement sense, and in a very specific way. And and for as far as your shoulder's concerned, and Jess is about to learn a whole barrage of new things to bring into it as well.
Awesome.
And there's at least another 25 different things that we could be looking at in your shoulder to improve it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we barely scratched the surface. And that's
I get that. I absolutely get that. And go on.
I was just going to say, I have been working with Simon forever, and my journey is never ending with him, because this is forever not only him teaching me new pieces, but it's the ever evolving stuff that he's discovering and learning himself. So it's this just continuous mind-blowing experience. And he'll say to me, okay, Jess, are you ready for the next bit yet? And I'll have to get myself into a position that I have that capacity, because already the levels, which, as we said, Bart, you've had the tiniest amount of joint muscle position function, and a little bit of respiratory and some little bit of sort of ocular stuff, which is your visual integration stuff. It's marginal compared to what we can do and what we continue to be able to do. And Simon will only teach me it as I'm ready for it, and as I've got a piece and he feels comfortable that I'm, at that point. But this is something I've committed to doing with him weekly, to continue to upgrade and get all the new stuff that's coming through, because it's just this never-ending, wonderful
So
thing.
At what stage do you get issued with your lightsaber?
Yeah. When do I become a Jedi?
Yeah.
Joking aside, that's a difficult thing for me to answer, because I'm always developing it, and certain things have been replaced by other things because they're just better and more efficient. I find it difficult to teach people purely because I don't want to teach a course and then another course and another course, and then that's all redundant because I've replaced it with this new way of doing it. It's just much faster, more efficient, and so on.
Which is what you've continued to do for the last decade that I've known you.
And I find that ethically very difficult. Like, a lot of people I know, they would just say, "This is my, level 1, level 2, level 3," and they'll keep selling those levels forever. But I find that difficult because, for me, if I've developed level 4 and level 4 is wiped out 1 to 3, then I don't need to teach 1 to 3 anymore.
Yeah.
I want to offer what's going to get the fastest result and what's going to get the best outcome for the person receiving NRT. And that's always been the difficult part. I mean, we're getting to a place now where through the developments, it's 16 years of testing and developing now, where I feel like it's finally reaching a stage where it has clearly defined levels which are teachable and aren't going to change drastically to the point where we're going to just scrap them and move on.
Yeah.
Which makes it where we can give Jess a lightsaber. It makes it that place where she's a Jedi Knight of NRT.
Do you know what? I feel like one anyway. And I did used to have some funny little feelings when Simon would scrap something and go, "No, don't do that. We now can just do all of this for this." And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I've just learned all of those bits, or now I've got this to learn, or someone else was taught it and now it was way faster and more efficient to do. And I was like, well, you didn't have to go through X, Y, and Z like I did. But actually, I have such gratitude for that, because that has taught me so much. Like, my depth of understanding of learning is so much deeper than just if I jumped in at this position or even 2 years ago. And I have been trusted and allowed and had responsibility for using this amazing tool to my best ability, and to continue to commit to learning all the new pieces and the upgrades that make my clients have an even better result, if that's possible. And that's the thing, it's like, you've had a tiny bit, Bart, and look at your results. If you'd had all these, it's just the results are, and the potential for this is just extraordinary. And I get excited. So rather than feeling a bit like resentful, I just feel blessed and very, very grateful and excited to see the next bits. And so are my clients. And they know that these bits are coming because they've seen new bits of kits sitting in my office, and they're like, "Oh, what are those?" And I'm like, "I'm learning this new stuff in the next few weeks." And they're like, oh my God, tell me about that, because they get to reap the rewards of everything that I learned from you, Simon. So keep blowing my brain. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Optimize, right? We're just trying to optimize people's health in a physical way.
Yeah.
And if there's a better way of doing it, then we need to start from scratch and do it a better way. I'm not. People always think, when someone develops something, often they become gurus of their thing and they get so defensive and identify themselves by it. And I've always put NRT in my mind, like, it's this thing over here that I developed, yes, but it's not me. So I'm happy to scrap it if something better comes along that totally wipes it out. I mean, it's absolutely not a problem. I'm more concerned about, am I doing the best I can for the person who's paying me money to help them? And I don't want to do something where it is just this real-time magic effect where you feel temporarily better and then you're straight back to where you were. I did that for many years. I have a background in exercise and all different kinds of bodywork therapies, and I've done that to death. And people have just come back for the same treatments over and over. It's like the chiropractor who seems to do the same routine of adjustments on every person for years. What's the point if it doesn't yield anything more than that momentary change, and then you're back again?
Yeah. And I love that. I love that with NRT, because you have the confidence to say that that's not going to happen. And like, I've had so many people, hundreds of people that have had either physio or chiropractor, and they've said, look, it either made it worse, or I just resolved myself to the fact that I would have to go twice a week for the rest of my life. Like, one of my very good friends who was in a very sick state when I got home, and she was seeing a chiropractor twice a week, and she had debilitating back pain and shoulder pain and neck spasms and her weight gain was ridiculous. And I took one look at her and said, Holly, we are going to sort you out, because you can't keep going like this. She said, even if I could just do the chiropractor like once every 2 weeks, like I could, and she's thinking for the rest of her bloody life. And so
She's addicted, right?
yeah, and because she was scared that it was going to get worse, that was where she was at. Because I said to her, why would you keep going back if you didn't get any better? And she just said, I was terrified that if I didn't keep going, I would end up in an even worse state than I currently was. And now she's amazing. She's lost tons of weight. She's vibrant. Her energy levels are there. She's got function. She's got strength. She's got mobility. She can pick up her kids and bend over and vacuum or do whatever she needs to do without spasming, shooting pain. And this, even where she's at, is just, it's like a completely different body. And she didn't realize that that was even capable. And that's the thing with NRT, is we do work with a lot of people that are hopeless, a lot of people that have tried everything else, a lot of people that are looking for something to help them. And we are very, very, very lucky that this tool does exactly that. And that's where the confidence comes from, is seeing it over and over again for the last almost decade. And so you go, yeah, I can help you with that. Yeah, I can help you with that.
Indeed. And Jess, if you think about that, right, you're never treating anybody's condition. You're never treating anybody's pain.
Yeah.
In fact, you're never even treating anybody's symptoms. In fact, they don't even need to tell you a single word when they walk through the door or send you a single letter beforehand or anything.
Yeah.
Because all you do is you just assess their motor control, and then you treat the deficits in their motor control.
Yeah.
And that improves the contractile efficiency of the areas of the body that weren't working. And that brings balance to the way their system is organized and working. And they feel better for that.
Yeah.
And that's why we've never claimed to treat anything but contractile efficiency. That's all we do, right? But it's hard to sometimes get that message across to people that actually a muscular system that's not working well and contracting well can lead to a whole range of symptoms. It can lead to fibromyalgia type symptoms, and actually we can treat someone's muscular system and they can feel better. It can lead to all sorts of things. And that's the crazy thing about it, because you could never treat a condition anyway. You'd never know what was causing any condition, any pain. So we just take our measurements, we take our data objectively, and then we treat what we see and we prove that. And then we come back next time and we measure what we did last time. We check that that's still the case and you're still able to do the things that you now have learned to do, and it's sustainable.
Yeah.
And then we know we're making progress and we move forward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going back over the same treatment over and over, and we're just doing what everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add to a bit to that, though, Simon.
Indeed,
say that. I mean, you're saying you treat the efficiency of muscular contraction, and yes, I get that's what you're doing, absolutely, via activating neural pathways that have been quiescent for sometimes years, in my case, multiple decades, absolutely. But it's not just that for me, because I'm sure Jess has noticed this. She hasn't really actually said much, but I'm sure she's noticed this. When we first started a couple of months ago, without me looking in a mirror, I couldn't have told you where any of my shit was. I had no kinesthetic sense. I would hold my shoulders very, very unevenly, and had done for decades. My neck was all uneven. I couldn't hold my head straight without actually looking in a mirror to correct myself. Now I know where my shit is. I have my kinesthetic sense back of where my segments are, where my head is, where my shoulders are. Are they level? Am I doing that? Am I doing that? I know, and I did not know that before. So it's not just the ability to recruit those muscles, but it's also reteaching your brain to get the incoming messages and to correctly assess that and to know where your segments are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important as well for function,
indeed,
for strength.
And that, Bart, to elaborate on that, if you think, when I say contractile efficiency, we're measuring contractile efficiency, but what's causing that lack of contractile efficiency could be a whole host of things. That can come from all different kind of receptors and embedded in all different kinds of tissues. And when you improve that sensory input, it can lead to improved coordination, improved posture, improved spatial positioning and awareness, I mean, all sorts of stuff. I mean, people can move in very different ways. They become aware of themselves in very different ways. It's much bigger than just contractile efficiency, but the only thing we can measure clinically is contractile efficiency.
Yeah.
That's the objective data you can take and say, yes, that has improved. Look at this graph. You've got physically stronger. You can generate more force, but you haven't been training. And you can do that even within 1 hour. And next week you come back and you can still do that, right? We can measure that contractile efficiency, but it's an enhancing I'm always looking for new ways of getting new receptor types that affect different kinds of input that change the way we operate. And the more of those we can cover, the more holistic I can be about that, the more you're going to know yourself intimately on all levels.
Yeah.
When it comes to the way you move and control your body.
Yep, absolutely appreciate that, and I get absolutely what you're saying and why you're saying it. I just wanted to throw out there that there are intangibles, boys and girls, that are the cherries on the top of the cake of the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But just for me, even just knowing where my bits and pieces are in space when I couldn't do that before, that gives me great hope, because my plan is to play cricket competitively for the first time in several decades this year at age 50.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I mean, I've played recreationally, I've played socially. I played some village cricket when I lived in England for a while, but at a very low level, and with old men who were really there for the
like
for the teams, frankly. Well, like I am now, but actually I'm looking at playing senior men's competitive cricket with blokes in their 20s or against.
I love that.
Against
I love that,
20s.
Bart. It's so good.
So,
I had another guy who lost his love of golf because he couldn't play. And his wife actually sent him to me. I'd fixed her back, and she was like, "Oh my God, you need to see Charlie. His shoulder, he can't even put a cardigan on." And he hadn't played golf for 5 or 6 years. And you've met those two, Simon, and you've seen how their progress is and their bodies and their health have completely transformed. And he gets to do something he loves again, and he gets to play golf every week, and they get to live. And I'm excited for you to do cricket, Bart. Like, I'm excited for people to be able to do the things they love.
Also, I forgot about it too. Not just the cricketing applications and all of that as well, but also I've noticed I play quite a bit of heavy rock guitar, and the shoulder that was destroyed is my picking hand, and there's a lot of very, very fast all this kind of stuff, which has been really, really poor, actually, my entire career since this injury. In fact, it was the thing that led me to start singing and stop playing guitar altogether, really. So since then, for the last several decades, I've been playing guitar I've been a legend in my own living room. But suddenly, after a few treatments with Jess, actually the picking action is back. I can actually I don't get tired, and it's in rhythm, and it's not, interesting. And I haven't even mentioned that to her, but that's just something I've noticed. Just
amazing.
Incredible.
A limitation anywhere in your body can create so many limitations in your life.
That's so true, Simon.
Doesn't matter where it is, it can just affect us in so many little ways every day that we don't even realize until it's gone.
Yeah. Right.
And that's quality of life, people. Quality of life.
That's it.
Thank
okay,
you guys
so
much.
if we've piqued your interest in NRT and getting treatment, you can get hold of Jess. We will put her email in the show notes underneath this video. There may well be a wait, boys and girls. She's a busy lady, but nonetheless, do send her a note. And if you need to be prioritized in some way, she may well be able to sort something out for you.
If you're in London, take advantage. Go and see Simon. He is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely, of course.
And I
of course.
desperately miss seeing him in person. But luckily, I get to see you on a weekly basis, my friend, and upgrade and educate myself via both of you. So, if you have anything that is incurable, if you have anything that you have struggled with, if you have anything that you feel hopeless, Simon Frost is the guy to see. So he's in London. I'm in New Zealand. There's not very many practitioners. There's less than 20 of us on this planet, on this globe, which means we're all pretty rammed. but we love what we do and we love helping people. And Simon has only chosen people to teach that actually genuinely care and love and really want to help people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yay!
All right, Jessica, thank you very much for organising this. I've been wanting to talk to Simon and interview Simon for a long time, as you know, because this is an area of fascination and interest to me. As a former sports scientist, biomechanist, among other things as well, very, very interesting. Simon, thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. Simon Frost, ladies and gentlemen, visionary, deep thinker on the workings of the human body, obviously, and a bloke who has put together a system that could well revolutionize your life. It certainly has mine already, even though we've only scratched the surface, of which I'm well aware. I look forward to delving into the depths with Jessica in time to come. And when the current craziness is over and travel isn't such a thing, we will get together and we'll get some hands-on treatment and get some actual measurements done, and we'll be able to establish what I already know, and that is that it's night and day already on this shoulder. So,
awesome.
And it's not just
Thank you
injuries,
so much,
boys
Simon.
and girls, but all sorts of things non-injury related as well that you might well think, this has nothing to do with neural pathways or neural problems. Ask, make the inquiry, and Jess will tell you. Simon will tell you whether it's something that
exactly.
they think they can get a hold of or not.
We'll know very quickly. We'll be able to help you out.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you both. Once again, appreciate it very much. I hope this has been valuable for you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, over 18, of course, on my channel, because that's the way it is here. And stick around when we're during the next week or so, we'll be talking about all sorts of things going on in the world of both nutrition and exercise and all sorts of things as we do every week. So we'll see you then, boys and girls. Ciao for now.
Bye now.